Fast, focused, and fearless. Here's everything you need to know this rush hour of February 7, Friday. I'm Riza Diaz. Jump-starting today's rush with authorities going with a former sports venue as quarantine facility for Filipinos coming from nCoV-stricken Wuhan City. Greg Gregorio has the report.
After much discussion last year on its purpose after the 30th SEA Games, the multi-billion peso New Clark City in Tarlac will now open its doors one more time. This time as a quarantine center for repatriated Filipinos from China. Health Secretary Francisco Duque III says this was offered by the base's Conversion and Development Authority. Officials initially considered the Mega Drug Rehab Center in Nueva Ecija as quarantine venue for individuals suspected of carrying nCoV. Now authorities are going with the former sports venue.
It's much more strategically located. One. Number two, the facilities are more complete. The ambience is very nice. It's well lit. It's open space, so the rooms are with almost complete amenities, with refrigerators, television, individualized toilets, which is very, very good. Unlike in Fort Magsaysay, where the toilets, yung palikuran, ay dapat they will have to share the toilets.
The department has yet to account how many medical staff will man the quarantine facility, but they said it will come from 5 different hospitals in the region. Meanwhile, there are already DFA officials in China processing the repatriation. More than 40 Filipinos agreed for the voluntary repatriation, but this number may still change since some of them still have documentary problems with the immigration authority in China. Being sick also poses a problem.
And if they are found to be with a fever or any symptom of the nCoV, they will be taken by the Chinese authorities to their hospital, to their facility for treatment, and they will not be boarded.
The OFWs were initially scheduled to leave China on February 8 and arrive at the Clark International Airport on Sunday, February 9. But this is only if the DFA can secure a permit from the Chinese government for the flight itself.
Repatriation is not solely a Philippine-dictated procedure. It entails coordination with the Chinese authorities. It requires our compliance with Chinese rules on the containment of infectious diseases. So all of this, we are working closely with the Chinese authorities on the ground.
Upon arriving in the Philippines, those with flu-like symptoms will be brought to an undisclosed hospital immediately, while others will be brought to the NCC and treated as person under investigation. They will be monitored within 14 days, and upon discharge, they will be assisted by the OWA and the DFA. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
Despite efforts to contain the novel coronavirus, more and more people are still getting infected with the disease. As of 11 p.m. yesterday, there are now a total of 28,353 confirmed cases of nCoV around the world, while the death toll remains at 565. But on the brighter side, 1,382 people have recovered from the illness. Now, here in the Philippines, the number of suspected nCoV cases have jumped to 178. A coronavirus-related casualty involving a 58-year-old Pinay domestic worker has been reported in Dubai. The Philippine Star reports that this was confirmed by Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello. However, it's still not clear whether she suffered from the 2019 nCoV or from the MERS coronavirus. At least 6 fellow passengers of the nCoV-positive Chinese couple are showing symptoms of the disease. 3 of which were aboard the Cebu Pacific flight DG6519, while the others were the Chinese couple's co-passengers in the Philippine Airlines flight to Dumaguete. This is according to the CIDG, which is in charge of the contact tracing. Some of the passengers showing flu-like symptoms are now undergoing self-quarantine at home, while the rest are being monitored in various hospitals. From Filipinos Star ngayon, President Duterte wants an hourly broadcast of health advisories related to the 2019 nCoV in all government broadcast stations and attached news agencies. Presidential Communications Secretary Martin Andanar says the move is meant to stop the spread of panic-inducing fake information about the virus. Health protocols are in place in Clark, Pampanga, where Filipinos to be repatriated from China will be landing. JC Cosico has the report.
About 12,000 passengers depart and arrive daily at the Clark International Airport in Pampanga. And this weekend, 45 Filipino repatriates from Wuhan, China will be entering this gateway, to the dismay of some travelers here.
Siguro, i-isolate. Not directly at the airport. Hindi natin maiiwasan if ever yung mga nakakasalamuhan natin.
Higpitan na lang po siguro ng management po dito para po maihiwalay po kaagad sila kung talaga pong sila ay suspected na infected po ng nCoV.
Airport officials assured that the plane carrying the repatriated Filipinos will land in an area distant from the main passenger terminal so as to avoid direct contact with other passengers.
We actually identified para mas mabilis at mas komportable din yung pag-process, yung arrival process ng ating mga dadating na kababayan. Of course, para din maiwasan yung panic.
They also no longer have to pass through regular quarantine, immigration, and customs checks. The repatriates will then be transported to New Clark City for their 14-day quarantine, while those exhibiting symptoms will be admitted in hospitals.
We have to isolate the passenger with symptoms just to prevent the spread of the infection.
However, Clark Airport authorities say these plans are still up for approval from concerned agencies, like the Health Department and the Bureau of Immigration, among others. But as of now, the Foreign Affairs Department is still waiting for Chinese authorities to give the repatriation the green light. Once they obtain the permit from China, the first batch of OFWs is expected to arrive on Sunday. For News 5, JC Cosico, we are One News.
The government made an exemption to the travel ban on Thursday, allowing some flights from stranded Chinese and Filipino passengers. Gerald de la Peña tells us more.
Amid an ongoing travel ban, a China Southern Airlines flight from Guangzhou and a Cathay Pacific flight from Hong Kong arrived at Naiya Thursday afternoon. The flight was almost empty, save for a handful of Filipino passengers. The Airline Operators Council said the Chinese Embassy in Manila had asked China Southern Airlines to mount at least one flight daily to and from mainland China to transport Chinese nationals from the Philippines. The returning flights from China can only take Filipino travelers. Philippine Airlines, on the other hand, will mount a round-trip flight to Xiamen on Monday to service stranded Filipinos in China, as well as Chinese nationals in the country who wish to go back to China.
Dagsaan po ang request ng mga stranded passengers na makalipad patungong China and vice versa as an expression of goodwill at bilang tugon sa kanilang panawagan. We requested the Philippine government that to give us permission for these special flights.
After the flight, PAL's pilots and crew will undergo a 2-week quarantine. The carrier is also looking at the passenger demand to see if there's a need for more round-trip flights to China. Airline operators said only about 10% of the total number of flights to China are operating as of the moment. This number is expected to decrease as Cathay Pacific plans to reduce more flights bound for Hong Kong, while China Air is considering the use of smaller aircraft.
Well, obviously, it is a market-driven operation. Kung kukunti na lang ho at wala na ho sila sasakay, siguro naman, economies of scale, ang babawas po sila ng mga flights.
Aviation authorities reminded incoming Filipino passengers from China that they will be required to do self-quarantine for 2 weeks to prevent the spread of the virus. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, we are One News.
Moving on to other headlines, senators were in a tough discussion on Thursday regarding key military deals with the United States. That's weeks after President Duterte called for the termination of the Visiting Forces Agreement with the U.S. Menlos Pañas has the details.
On January 23, amid a diplomatic row, the president expressed his decision to unilaterally abrogate the Visiting Forces Agreement with the United States. 2 weeks later, at the Senate hearing, lawmakers asked Foreign Affairs Secretary Teddy Boy Locsin Jr. if a letter of termination had already been sent to the U.S.
I have prepared the notice of termination, but it has not been sent upon the orders of the president.
Locsin cited negative implications should the VFA's cancellation push through. With no VFA, he said the Mutual Defense Treaty or MDT and the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement or EDCA will have no legal basis.
The termination of the VFA may impact the upcoming fiscal year 2020 activities, which the Philippines military and law enforcement agencies need to enhance their capabilities.
Locsin mentioned effects of the termination to anti-terrorism efforts and deterring aggressive action in the West Philippine Sea. Some senators, however, questioned the resolve of the U.S. in upholding the agreement.
Pwede rin po ba natin hingin sa Amerika na palayasin na ang China sa Scarborough Shoal?
I wouldn't do it, simply because this is a mutual defense treaty and not an invitation to a war. When it happened, they should have sunk our ship. Our ship should have allowed itself to be sunk and ignore Obama. When our ship is sunk, without any consent from the U.S., you trigger the Mutual Defense Treaty.
The secretary also stated the VFA cancellation's possible effects to the economy, considering that the U.S. is our third largest trading partner. Locsin said he understands the president's decision but recommends a review of the agreement.
Let's review this in a way that imparts the mutual respect that should underpin a mutual defense. This is the time to do it.
Senator Franklin Drilon then asked Locsin if the president consulted him on the matter.
What we're asking is, was there consultation? There's none.
Some senators also brought up their constitutionally mandated role in terminating an international agreement or treaty. The U.S. is set to spend over 200 million pesos for the AFP's equipment and aircraft training, but this and other plans won't proceed without the VFA. Reporting for News 5, Mean Los Baños, we are One News.
Let's fast break now to Sports Rush. Another NCAA Division I school in the U.S. has taken a liking to basketball phenom Kai SOTTO. The coach of the Boston Eagles paid a visit to Kai's home in the U.S. to meet his family and speak about his future. This is just a day after Georgia Bulldogs reportedly offered SOTTO to play for them. Other schools like the Kentucky University, Georgia Tech, and Auburn University have expressed interest also in the 7'2" Cajun. The Wuhan virus outbreak is not just affecting classes and tourism. It also poses a threat to sporting competition here and abroad. Here's the story.
The Philippine Sports Commission is planning to temporarily postpone their events to protect the athletes and the public against the 2019 novel coronavirus acute respiratory disease. Possible affected events include the National Sports Summit 2020, the Philippine National Games, Batang Pinoy, and Children's Games. Seminars and other gatherings with more than 40 people involved would also shelved indefinitely.
Since I am in charge of this office, it's really serious because isang tao lang mamatay dyan, it will really be a big problem. So, bakit ako maghintay na mayroong isang contamination o infected? So, mabuti na yung i-prevent mo yan kaysa may problema.
The PSC likewise advised the Philippine Paralympic Committee, or PPC, to consider postponing the 10th ASEAN Para Games on March 20 to 28. PPC President Mike Barredo said he will be flying to Thailand on Friday to consult with the ASEAN Para Sports Federation to discuss their decision. But if the federation wishes to push through with the Para Games, Barredo claims that the athletes are prepared since they have been continuously training amid the outbreak.
Our preparations continue. We will continue to prepare for the games and in all areas that are necessary. So tuloy lang kami, tuloy din, no, Chairman, ng mga training ng atleta until such time that a final decision will be made on the matter.
Other athletes are also pushing through with their training. That's why the PSC is doing its best to educate all personnel about the disease.
There has been no suspected or person of interest na having symptoms. Of course, we regularly monitor them. We have put out several posters and information materials to our athletes and our coaches. Of course, with the board, they will not approve any travel to China, but nonetheless, any travel to international, to any country.
Meanwhile, it's up to the National Sports Association to decide whether they will allow athletes to train abroad or join qualifiers. The PSC will also be meeting with the Education Department if Palarong Bansa will push through.
And that's how today is shaping up to be. Join us again next time for another round of Rush. I'm Rita Diaz. We are One News.